This podcast is meant for general health information and is not meant to override any medical advice. All questions will be screened and not contain any personal information. If you want a private consultation, contact us via positivechoice.org or you can contact your provider directly. Thank you and enjoy the episode.
Hello, and welcome to the Positive Choice Wellness Podcast. My name's Melanie. I'm an exercise physiologist and nutritionist.
And my name is Kimberly, and I'm a registered dietitian.
Hooray! I'm always so happy to hear that. I don't know why.
I appreciate that.
Like every time I hear registered dietitian, I'm like, oh, what is that? So cool.
I feel the same way about exercise physiologists, so it's pretty cool.
So we just have the other half of what we wish we would learn, right?
Exactly.
To be completely forthcoming, I considered the dual program when I was in school. I was like, oh, I could do dietitian and I could do exercise phys, you know?
Right.
And then I had to take biochem and thought, I'm just going to stick with exercise phys. I don't think I want to do that. Yeah, it was organic chemistry and biochem, and both of those, I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. This is hard. Yeah. I want to not. Because I already had to take biomechanics, and that was hard enough as that was, so, like, we're good.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Super fair.
Yeah, but, you know, it's just like, oh, I wish I was one of those. One of you.
I know.
One of you
people.
I
get it. I wish I was one of you, so it's all good.
Yeah, see? We get to share.
We do, yeah. That's what makes us great.
So I'm really excited for our topic today because I like to cook, and you did the lovely job of inquiring with some of your folks in your classes, like, what would you like to learn about? And we heard some feedback, and we heard some of you would like to learn about how to modify recipes to make them healthier.
Yes. Exciting stuff.
Oh, and I love talking about food, so, like, this is right up my alley.
Yeah, straight up. And also, not only are you you enjoy cooking, but you're also pretty stinking good at it. I've had a lot of your food, so I can't wait to learn from your wisdom.
I learned not too long ago because I think the pandemic really started this, where I was like, I think cookies become a hobby. I think it's a hobby for me now. It's not like, oh, I like cooking. I like to make dinner. I'm like, ooh, what can I make that's weird? And I kind of fit it into meals, but then at the same time, but I want to try something new, which also means I don't really have a good list of what's a quick and easy thing I can make today, because I make so many things. I don't know what I make anymore.
Fair enough. You can't remember what's quick and what wasn't.
Right? I'm like, what have I not made in a while? And I have to think. I actually do have a list. I made a list for my husband. But he's like, what do we have for dinner?
Nice.
I'm like, look at the list. Pick from here. So I love talking about how to make recipes healthier because I think a long time ago when we were teaching healthy balance before it got revamped, this is 2016, maybe even 2015, a long time ago, we were talking about potentially revamping something. And one of our dietitians had said, well, we don't want to handhold. We don't want to handhold these people and tell them exactly what to eat and when to eat it. But then we had to take a step back and realize, not everyone is super intuitive when it comes to cooking, and not everyone knows how to cook or how to even make things healthier. And we take for granted the knowledge we have in the field that we work in. Yes. And probably there's a little bit of a disconnect sometimes because even for myself, sometimes I'm like, oh, wait, people don't think like that. This is not a normal way of thinking. This is how I think, but that's me. I'm weird. So that's fine. I fully embrace that. So that's why I think it'd be a good topic to start off with here today, because when it comes to making healthier foods, it doesn't just have to be a salad. I think a lot of us default to salads, right?
100%. Yeah.
And as much as a salad can be extremely delicious and fine, I think that can get kind of boring. And some people are like, well, how can I make something I actually like that isn't a salad, right? And my first recommendation, this is the basic one. This is if you're I don't know, go on to a search engine and type healthy, and then the thing you would like to make next to it, and then just see what comes up. Not everything that pops up will be healthy. I want to be forthcoming on that. People like to think they're being healthy, but it does help to get some inspiration and ideas sometimes, or maybe you find a recipe that you fall in love with. But that's actually how I started doing this back in the day before I got really into cooking. That's exactly what I did. How do I make something healthy? All right, healthy mac and cheese. I don't know, just something, right? I like it. How do I make it better for me, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I say that in classes that like, yes, you still have to look at the internet with a filter, but this is where it can actually become a helpful resource for us, like expanding your knowledge in that realm, especially because like you said, so many people, cooking's not intuitive, or they want something fast, or maybe they just straight up don't enjoy it and they're like pure beginners, anything like that. But yeah, that's a good tip right there.
Yeah. And so I always like to share what I started off doing because, like I didn't just wake up and just go, I love cooking. Let me just do all things cooking forever now. I at one point, like I liked cooking, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I was kind of learning as I went. And it was a lot of just looking at videos online, looking at recipes, making decisions like, well, do I like that? Do I like that? And now I'm not saying you have to like make a recipe or something. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do that. You can definitely just make foods you enjoy and just swap stuff out for healthier alternatives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Make simple swaps and then healthify the recipe pretty quickly.
Exactly. Like there's a recipe I really like to make for a shepherd's pie that's like, solid. And I was like, well, how do I make this plant-based? Like that was my thought. Cause like, I'm in this mode of like, how could I turn something vegan? Like I just want to do that. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, this calls for ground lamb. And I was like, first off, that's one, very hard to find. And then two, I don't want to use ground lamb. I'd like to use like veggie crumbles or like fake ground beef that's healthy. Like I'm not talking like the higher fat one. I'm talking like the really lean kind of soy crumbles. Yeah. And so what I figured out was, okay, well, if I follow this recipe and skip the meat step, because you don't cook this stuff, you warm it up essentially. So I skipped the meat step and I followed the recipe and I thought, well, this isn't going to taste like meat. How do I make it taste like meat? It's like, red wine. So I added some red wine to it, changed the color, threw the fake meat in, cooked that up. You would have no clue that it was vegan. And
nice.
Like that's the stage I'm at now, but sometimes it's just, it's quite simple. Like I swapped the chicken broth for red wine and I swapped the lamb for ground crumbles. That's all I did to that. Well, I guess I did like fake butter and I didn't use an egg, but like for the topping, but I just took something and made it something else. And of course, because I chose veggie crumbles over the lamb, that does reduce the calories significantly. So, and just like thinking like, how could I tweak this to make it a little bit healthier than it already is? And it doesn't have to be perfect, but something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think that's one thing that's cool about cooking, at least from what I hear. I'm not nearly the chef that you are.
I'm not a chef, I'm a cook. I didn't go to school for this.
Still, I don't know. I feel like you should be a chef. It's forgiving, right? Like you can like mess with it a little, like as compared to like baking, you can't mess with quite as much.
That's why I don't ever say I'm a baker. I'm not a baker at all. Like I can make bread and that's a whole other beast. And that's like it.
Right. Oh gosh, but your bread is delightful. But yes. But yeah, that's what's nice with cooking is it is forgiving and you can like, make tweaks and whatnot and continue to modify if you need to, if you messed up type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So like what I think would be a good starting point would probably to start with the cooking and what are just some examples of like basic swaps we can do that don't require a recipe, because I don't expect anyone in here to just like whip out some crazy recipes and make some like for me, like the shepherd's pie, like, let me just make this crazy recipe and do all these swaps. You don't need to do that. I'm using a very extreme example here. I think there's some basic, easy stuff we can do that makes our life a lot healthier without a lot of labor.
I love that. I'm all about easier, less labor.
Yeah. And my first recommendation is if you like that in chicken thighs, swap it for chicken breast. I'm sorry.
Oh, I know. The sad music plays. Yeah.
The easiest swap. I know. And like chicken breast isn't bad, honestly. It's just has a tendency to overcook really easily, which is why I think a lot of people don't like it because it gets overcooked. And
then dries out, right? And like
exactly. Yeah. So like I usually encourage people, if you can, like get a marinade you like of some sort and marinate your chicken breast in a flavor that you enjoy because it tenderizes it and it takes the heat a lot better when you cook it so it gets less overcooked.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, and I swear the flavoring is always better when you marinate than when you do like a dry rub or something like that. So
exactly. Chicken breast does really well when you marinate it because it's very, very lean. So you kind of have to add flavor. It's lacking that from the fat. That's why people like the chicken thighs so much because that's such a high fat content. It also, it's really hard to screw up a chicken thigh, quite honestly. So chicken breast is very easy to overcook. Yeah. And, doing something like that, I think, is a really great way just to start. Like, take a fattier option and swap for a leaner option. So instead of chicken thighs,
Love
chicken
that.
breast. But what would you do as a swap for beef? And I know if people are like, what? Hold on. Pump the brakes. Beef?
Yeah.
What if it's lean beef?
Oh, what a good question, right? I know people are territorial, I feel like, about their beef intake.
Mm-hmm.
But
and just cut ahead. I'm just going to add 2 other things. And bison and elk fall into this category of lean beef. We're just going to add that all together. Okay. Same.
Yeah.
Continue.
100%. Pork too, right? I would throw pork into the
even if it's lean. Yeah.
Red
add it
meat
in there
category.
Too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't honestly cook with red meats that often. What's a good swap for that?
Well, I guess, there are swaps, and like, unfortunately, not all of them are going to be equivalent in terms of like, they're not necessarily going to be animal based. They might be plant based, but they do create a lot of like plant-based alternatives that are pretty similar to beef that are not high calorie.
Yeah. Like the combos you were talking about.
Yeah. Gosh, I was at the store and I found some vegan pork. So it's not pork, it's plants. But
yeah,
it was like 1 gram of fat per serving. And I was like, heck yeah, this is awesome. And I made this Thai dish out of it because I just replaced the pork for the plant-based version and followed the recipe as it was written. Full of Thai basil, garlic, shallots. And then, you wouldn't have known that I used low-calorie fake pork.
That's epic. That's really epic. I love that.
And there's a lot of different brands. Like, that's so funny. I talk to my husband about this all the time. He's like, gosh, if plant-based eating was like this 10 years ago, I would have been eating plant-based so long ago. I'm like, I know.
Truly.
And like, I'm not 100% plant-based, just so people were curious. I just talk about it. I like to cook plant-based. I think it's fun. And you get to be creative. But there are good low-calorie plant-based comparable options out there to what you're looking for. Like, you like ground pork or ground beef, they always have some sort of comparable plant-based option out there you can get that tastes very similar.
I love that. Especially when you're getting like, more the high quality stuff that you should in theory, like a grass-fed, organic, whatever. That kind of stuff is not inexpensive. So yeah, I like that there's a comparable comparison. And it's a good idea, even if you aren't, like, if you're listening to this and you're not 100% plant-based or, whatever at all, it's a good idea to think about having like a night or 2 a week where you don't have meat with your dinner and you have, something like that.
Yeah. And this is like a little segue. Yeah. Like we've talked about plant-based eating in previous episodes, but just a little segue just for people to understand too. Cause my mom had a hard time wrapping her brain around like, I'm not vegan. No, she's a meat eater, meat and potatoes. That's what she does.
Yeah.
So I told her like, well, do you like lentil dal, which is an Indian dish? Like she made it for me when I was a kid. She loves dal. She's like, yeah, I love dal. I'm like, that's vegan. That's plant-based. There's no meat in that. And then she's like, oh, I'm like, it doesn't have to be vegan. It could just be Indian food. Like,
right.
So don't get too like off-put by me saying vegan proteins. If you're listening out here going, oh, I don't know about that. Because you probably love a lot of things that are plant-based and don't even realize it. So
yeah, 100%.
It's just accepting that sometimes a healthier alternative might be plant-based. It might, not always, but sometimes. Right. And so with pork and beef, unfortunately, that tends to be where we gravitate towards, because I can't say ground chicken is going to be comparable, but in the least in lieu, if you're like, well, I really just don't want to do plant-based yet, which is fine. In lieu of beef or pork that, ground, especially, I use ground turkey. That's like a standard swap that's been around for years and years and years. Ground turkey breast.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one.
Yeah, like I know a lot of people like to do, breakfast sausage or stuff like that. And it's like, if you get ground turkey and season it like a breakfast sausage, and the key is sage and fennel, by the way. If you add those 2 things along with many other seasonings, it will taste like sausage.
Nice. Love that.
Yeah.
Sage and fennel. Okay.
Yeah. Sage and fennel are the 2 main ingredients in breakfast sausage. So that's why people, when they make ground turkey and they cook it up, they're like, this doesn't taste like sausage. You're like, you're missing the 2 things that make sausage outside of like the fat. But,
right.
But yeah, like that's something. Ground turkey's a great option instead of ground beef. So you can make turkey burgers instead of beef burgers, turkey crumbles, turkey spaghetti, like turkey meatballs. I also have found ground chicken breast, because to be completely forthcoming, I prefer chicken breast to turkey breast. I think the flavor's a little bit better. That's my preference. And you can find lean ground chicken breast everywhere. It's all over the place.
True.
And that's another good alternative. Choosing chicken instead of turkey. If you don't like turkey too much, that's another way to do it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then another thing too, like I like to make myself, I meal prep a lot. So I meal prep myself these like breakfast burritos, if you will. So like a whole wheat tortilla. I make fake refried beans. They're just done in my Instant Pot, but pressure cooked beans that I blend essentially that are not refried at all. And then I add in soy rizo.
Oh, ooh.
Yeah. And so if you like chorizo, which is made from pork or sometimes beef, sometimes chicken, depends. Soy rizo, which you have to be careful because some are higher fat than others. You have to kind of pay attention to this. But I find this at like certain grocery stores that are a little more health forward. To me, the spices of chorizo, they completely mask the flavor of the meat that you're eating. So in my opinion, aside from a slight texture difference, I don't notice the difference between soy rizo or chorizo that's made from pork. I cannot tell the difference.
Epic. That's great. I love that.
And you just have to look for the lower calorie ones, but they do exist. And so, that's another good one you can do, which it's just made from tofu. And tofu takes on the flavor of whatever you mix it with. But those are some of like, I guess my good meat swaps that you could do, like meat wise. Yeah. I can't really say seafood or fish is like needs to be swapped because those are great on their own. So that's like chicken breast. Just go for those. I wouldn't complain about those at all.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. Good, lean, healthy options for us.
Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to figure out like a healthy meat alternative, generally speaking, chicken breast, turkey breast, seafood, or not all, but most plant-based options are like pretty good, just to have as an alternative to those things. It sucks to have to say it, and like I'm not saying you can't have like beef or pork or those types of things you like, but if you want to have them, they shouldn't be every day. Like the American Heart Association says, what, like once a week? Is that the recommendation?
Yeah. I think so. I was going to say once a week, even less if you want. Make it more of like a fun splurgy item as opposed to like a regular part of your routine.
Treat it like a cocktail.
There you go.
Every now and again is okay, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so that would be one thing that I like to do. Additionally, as far as like other swaps, a lot of people think potatoes are bad just because they do get a bad rap, but like potatoes are fine. You don't need to swap potatoes. You don't. You need to eat your potatoes, just don't fry them. That's all I'm asking. Don't deep fry them and cover them in butter. Or gravy.
Or salt or whatever.
Yeah. Like I love a good crunchy French fry, but I don't want to eat French fries every day. So I take a bunch of baby red potatoes or gold potatoes, I chop them up and roast them in the oven. Or your air fryer, and you can make yourself some very healthy alternatives to French fries.
Yes, absolutely. And it still kind of kicks that same feeling for you. Like you still feel like you're getting the French fries. Still delightful.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes these swaps aren't even the food item. It's just how you're making the food item. That's the swap,
Yeah, the cooking technique. Absolutely. No more deep frying.
I know. Anything that's deep fried, use an air fryer. That's actually good.
Exactly.
But if you get those frozen French fries and think, well, sweet, Melanie said if I air fry these, those are par fried. They fry them partially before you get them. That's deceiving. You chop a potato, you do it yourself.
Yeah. I think you save a little bit more too when you do that. It's more labor, but you
do. It's a little bit, well, of course, to do things yourself, there's always more labor involved, but you control every aspect.
True. And I saw a hack online and I tried it once and it actually worked, where you cut a potato using like the apple cutters, where it gets like the core and does the wedges, and you just do the potato on there and then you get little wedge potato.
Oh, that's smart.
Anyway, it's really dang hard to push that cutter down on it. But anyway, it worked for us if you want to save, chopping too much.
Yeah, a good technique also is chop off like a butt of that potato so it lays tall, and then you don't have to hold it. You can just
truly, that's smarter. Yes. Love that.
I'm just thinking someone's gonna chop their fingers off, so I gotta put it in a safety disclaimer.
Do what Melanie said. Cut it in half first.
It's like, well, not even cut it in half, just like make it flat somewhere so it sits there you go. Without rolling around. That's just don't have rolly food. That's very dangerous.
Rolly food.
Yeah, you don't want things that roll around. I'm trying to think of other swaps that I've done in the past. Like something, if people are trying to avoid doing white rice, obviously brown rice is a pretty healthy swap. Wild rice is another good one. They usually have other grains in there that are delicious. Quinoa is a good one too. Like if you're trying to add more flavor to these things, it's the water you're cooking it in. That's what it is. Add chicken stock, add veggie stock. gosh, when I make quinoa, I throw in dried mushrooms in there while I'm cooking it. So it's mushroom waters, mushroom flavored quinoa.
Ooh, yum. That sounds delightful.
And it's easy.
Good.
Just throw, I don't measure. I just kind of grab a handful, but that's good enough mushrooms, and I throw them in there.
Right, right. Yeah, totally.
And then like healthy fats, this is a bigger swap. I think if you're trying to make healthier meals, not that butter is bad, but butter is not a health food. I know there's a big movement towards butter over using margarine, which I recognize and I understand. However, butter also will raise your cholesterol. That is just what it does. Maybe not to the point where you get high cholesterol, but it will raise it to a point where it's not necessarily a good thing. And I think we're a little butter crazy here in the US. We're like, let's use all the butter. Look, it's grass fed from happy cows. And we're like, yeah, that's great. But if you're going to make a dish, how you're seasoning it's really the bigger thing. And you don't need to add butter to make something taste better. And I personally, like, for example, if I'm making chickpea pasta or something, I don't buy butter. I don't add butter. I do like extra virgin olive oil or something. I add a liquid oil rather than butter because it's a healthier alternative.
Yes.
That's what I would encourage too, is doing something like that. And I know it sucks if you're looking for that butter flavor. And there's instances where I'd say, maybe if you can find a low ingredient type of margarine, that would be okay.
Right.
But I know that's tough. Like the butter dilemma is a tough one because I know it's hard to replace that. Like, well, olive oil isn't butter. It's like, no, I know.
I think it's more of like a heart issue probably than anything else. Like in terms of like we love it and it's hard to give it up. But I do know someone too had a similar issue with coconut oil. They used coconut oil to cook like absolutely everything, and coconut oil has a good like unique flavor too, depending on what you're cooking. And same concept. It's solid at room temperature, not liquid like what you're saying. So it's not the best for our cholesterol levels, that's for sure. We can use it, like you said, moderation, all that good stuff. But this person I'm thinking of used it in everything. And the next thing you know, they're right. Yeah. And next thing you know, their cholesterol levels were much, much higher than anticipated. And they had to cut it out. So,
So, aiming for liquid oils over solid oils more often than not. And if you're relying on butter to be the flavoring agent, you probably need to take a step back. I know it's like more of a cooking lesson here, but take a step back and look at how your food is seasoned prior to the addition of butter. And can you alter something earlier on that gives it more flavor that butter is not necessary? Love that. Like there's like a spice blend that I buy at a store, clearly. And I mix it into the water because it's like sun-dried tomatoes, lemon zest, thyme, rosemary, onions, garlic. And it's like all these pureed, dried things. And you throw it into the water and it flavors the water with that. So then at the end, all you have to do is add salt. You don't need to add oil. It's just flavored already.
That's great. Yeah.
And sometimes that could be the best way to swap, is just get it good flavor before the butter is even coming into the mix.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Focus on the variety of flavors too, because it's fun to have a mixture of flavors in there instead of the same thing that we taste in every dish all the time. So it might even pique your interest more.
Yeah.
Same with baking though. You can definitely cut butter out of baking, and some good swaps for that are like healthy oils, I guess. But a better one is usually like applesauce, something like that.
Yeah, I know that baking is kind of more
a little.
Well, baking's more of a chemistry than it is like an art. Like cooking is an art. You can do whatever you want, and most of the time it's going to be fine. Baking is a little bit more of an exact science. Like you kind of have to follow the rules, or else things may not turn out well. Right.
Exactly. And by not turn out well, it's like tends to be drier usually is what the end result is. But if you experiment a little bit, like you can do 50% butter, 50% applesauce, something like that. It involves some experimentation, but if you're into baking and making your own desserts and things like that, there are swaps for it that exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like applesauce is a go-to, or pureed fruit in general, or like pureed sweet potato. Yeah, those are really, really good swaps you can put in stuff. And sweet potato still makes like crusts and stuff really flaky if you want to add that to like crusts of pies.
Yes. We love a good sweet potato.
Yeah, sweet potatoes are great. Bananas are good too.
Yes.
That's a really good one to be adding to stuff. And then, not everything translates. So, you can't be like, well, I'm just going to omit everything and just add a banana. Like that might not work. And I can tell you from firsthand experience of trying to make a banana into a crust with flour, it doesn't work. It was the hardest crunchiest, most awful crust I think I've ever had in my life. And I was like, oh, that don't work. That's bad. That's why I say use sweet potato, not banana. But
Yep.
Because that'll be flakier. But you know, some things may not work, and that's okay. Right?
Yeah. Sometimes it just is a fun little experiment that you're trying, and it's okay if we aren't the most successful the first time out the gate.
Yeah, exactly. And being kind to yourself when you were like, well, okay, let's try something else. That didn't work.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yes.
Like, what other things do you do for baking that are like easy swaps?
Cutting back on sugar, I think, is a big one. So you can cut out
Cut up your sugar.
Don't cut it up. Yeah. You can cut out up to a third of the sugar that a recipe calls for before it really starts to mess with the texture. I have cut the sugar out of some of my recipes by half, and you just, you know, ultimately have to be okay with a drier product if that's the case. But a third, cutting out a third tends to not make a huge difference. Now I'm blanking, but I know you
Greek yogurt.
I was just gonna say, yes, Greek yogurt you can absolutely use. I think you can actually use it as a swap for eggs, just like banana. You can do that too. But it's a fun way to like amp up the protein just a little bit. You won't have the probiotics in there anymore, of course, if you bake it. But but that's actually a cooking one too, though, right? I have a lot of patients who like to use Greek yogurt, obviously more of like a topping or whatever, or like in a dip, I guess, as opposed to sour cream.
Yeah. They're pretty interchangeable.
Right, exactly. The flavors are eerily similar. So
like I love sauces. I love sauces. And so one of the things I like to do is I'll get Greek yogurt and blend it with chipotle peppers, garlic, lime, and salt.
Oof,
and
yum.
I turn it into a crema.
Ah, that sounds
and
great.
You can also add avocado and cilantro and lime and jalapeno and make a cilantro version of that, and it's still good. So
yeah.
You know, if you see a recipe that calls for sour cream, you likely can swap it for Greek yogurt and get away with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And be sneaky about it. I had a patient one time ask me just before Thanksgiving, her roll to make was double. No, it's like twice baked potatoes or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she wanted to like, you know, add a little something healthy to it but like not have her family know. Anyway, we chose to swap the sour cream for Greek yogurt and everyone loved them. She never told them anything. It went over very well.
There you go. See?
Yeah.
That's the way to do it. You just don't tell people you do it.
Exactly. They won't know if you don't lead them on.
Yeah, Greek yogurt's a good one. It goes sweet, it goes savory. Oh, gosh, a long time ago, I haven't done this in a minute now. I literally just thought of this. I was like, I haven't done this since before the pandemic. I used to get Greek yogurt and put it in a cheesecloth and let it hang over a bowl in my fridge so it'd strain a lot of the liquid off and get really, really, really thick. And It was cream cheese, essentially. And then I was spreading this ultra thick Greek yogurt on my bagels and putting everything but the bagel seasoning on top. And it was delicious. You wouldn't have even known it wasn't cream cheese.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's a good hack right there.
Yeah, it's and I don't know why I thought of doing that. I was like, I would try this thing, and it was really good.
Yeah, that's epic.
So that's something you could definitely do. But yeah, Greek yogurt works in baking, it works in cooking. I can think, unfortunately, the baking I think is a little bit more limited.
Correct.
You know, as far as like some people like, what about healthy swaps and like sugar? Can I use like artificial sweeteners, maybe or monk fruit or stevia or something instead of sugar? Is that something you could do in baking?
Gosh, that's a good question. Yes, in theory it is. You'd have to be mindful of like, it wouldn't be a 1-to-1 ratio switch because a lot of those alternative sweeteners are a lot sweeter, you know, per like whatever than sugar is. So I do think you'd have to be a little bit like cognizant as far as like how much the swap is for. I can't say I've experimented with that, but
I haven't taken a look in a minute. But I know that at least for some other alternative sweeteners, they had baking iterations of them. So I assume that there might be some more coming out because they're more popular to cook with, maybe. I don't know. That's my guess. I haven't actually checked, so I would hope so, but
right. Well, I'm sure because they're more on the rise anyway, and people are becoming more aware of how much sugar they consume. So that would be good. And another one that comes to mind when you say that is you cannot just directly swap whole wheat flour in place of your white flour when baking.
That was 100% my thought before I came into the conversation and led off with sugar. I was thinking I should talk about whole wheat flour.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you'll end up with like the Sahara Desert in a bowl. I don't know.
Yeah.
You can't do a 1-for-1 swap. So you have to, sometimes 50-50 ratio works. I think it depends on what you're making, but
whole wheat flour
but
is
unfortunately
a water
that's
sponge.
not the same. Yeah.
Whole wheat flour is a water sponge, and it doesn't have a lot of gluten. So if you're trying to make a bread or something, you're going to have a little bit of a difficult time getting the texture you're looking for if the recipe doesn't call for whole wheat flour.
Yep.
And flours are not 100% interchangeable in general. Just because it says flour doesn't mean it'll do the thing you want it to do. So, for example, if you're like, ooh, I ran out of whole wheat flour and white flour, let me use coconut flour. Don't do that.
Exactly.
If you want the saddest thing you've ever eaten in your life, that'll be the driest food in the world. Because coconut flour sucks up all the moisture. It is not interchangeable in the same way. You have to look up how to swap that in if you want it to work. And also, it's a fat source. So you're also removing a carb and adding more fat, which can add a lot of calories too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So especially with like almond flour and that kind of stuff. Like there's some flours that just don't work.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
definitely.
The other thing I was thinking too, also, because like, I mentioned earlier, like sauces, and like a lot of people think like my dishes are boring, like they're not exciting. And of course, yeah, if you're not putting sauces on stuff, sauces are what we love. Go to a restaurant, you're going to get a sauce. And, an easy swap is salsa. Salsa, like hands down, one of the best swaps you can do for almost any sauce if you're going for more of a Mexican feel, because it's just pureed vegetables and lime juice.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's a good tip.
And there's so many different salsas. You can look up recipes to make salsas. They're very, very healthy. I'm all for salsa.
Me too.
But another one that's really good too is utilize your food. Like utilize what you're already cooking and take the flavors from that and make a sauce from that. So like example could be, and you may have heard the term deglaze before. It's a cooking term, but essentially when you're cooking, you know how sometimes like charred bits or like brown bits stick to the bottom of the pan sometimes? You're like, man, this sucks. You're like scraping it off. So you have two options here. You can use broth or juice or wine or water, and you can pour that into the pan and it lifts the brown off and creates a sauce.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, like for example, like I make a healthier iteration of chicken piccata because I don't want to do the traditional, which is like full of butter and flour. So I actually would add a little cornstarch to thicken it. But I pound out the chicken breast instead of breading it. I just cook that up, pull it off to the side. Then I'll mix in a sauce of like lemon juice, chicken broth, a little bit of cornstarch mixed in. Don't do it after the fact. Mix it with liquids. And then it's like a splash of white wine. So after I've cooked the chicken breast, I throw that in the pan and it lifts all the delicious bits of that chicken off and it mixes it into the sauce and thickens up.
Ooh, nice. Okay, that's a good pro tip right there. Absolutely.
And you're just using the pan you already used. So take advantage of the flavors you've already created and just enhance them. Like add stuff you like. I mentioned adding wine and lemon juice because it's chicken piccata. That's the rule. You're cooking off the alcohol, so it's just the flavor of the wine. And I'm not adding enough to be like getting drunk or anything. Don't worry. But that's like I love cooking with wine because it really does enhance flavors from time to time. Even if you don't drink, I always encourage people have a bottle of cooking wine, like one you're definitely probably not going to drink, and just pour it into dishes periodically that you want to add flavor. Like another example, if you're making, I love to saute zucchini and onions together, and the onions may start to stick to the bottom of the pan. Splash of white wine. Now I got zucchinis, onion, and wine flavor. It's so good. So good.
That's great. I love that.
And then thickening stuff you've already made. Like I like to make a lot of stir fries, and thickening agents typically traditionally are like flour, right? If you're going to thicken a gravy, you're usually making a roux with butter and flour, which we can all agree is not like, ooh, that's healthy. Like that's definitely not. And cornstarch, tapioca starch, rice starch, potato starch, arrowroot powder, like there's all sorts of starches you can use. You mix them with a liquid and pour them in and stir, and it'll thicken the dish. And so when I'm making stir fries, I don't know why, I just love when like thick sauces coat the food I'm making with stir fries. Like I don't like a runny sauce. I want a thick sauce. So I'll mix like a mixture of like chicken broth, some soy sauce, maybe some sriracha, garlic, ginger, and pour in some cornstarch, and I'll stir that up and I'll thicken that sauce up and we're good to go.
Nice. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's a good tip. Definitely.
I like sauce.
Yeah, it adds so much to our food. So heck yeah.
And again, we don't have to make these unhealthy, high fat, high calorie sauces. We can definitely lighten them up and utilize what you've already done. It's already going to be in the dish. That's a great way to go about it. And if you made a sort of pasta, even if it's whole wheat pasta, save the pasta water because that will thicken up sauces too. You know, reserve some of that cooked pasta water because that's a great cooking additive because you're already eating the pasta. So it's not like it's going to be any worse.
Right.
And then, you know, another thing too is like if there's a vegetable you really enjoy that you can cook and like chop up and make into a sauce. I made chimichurri the other day. It's not hard to make. It's actually very easy to make. And it's delicious and it's flavorful and, you know, you can control how much you're adding to it. So like it called for like 2/3 of a cup of oil. And I was like, ha, no, I'm not doing that. Because I did way less oil. Because I was like, I'm not having oil soup over here. But you can make all sorts of stuff with just vegetables, right? It doesn't have to be creamy or anything like that. And if you want to do creamy sauces, another thing too, we have a plant-based cookbook and this recipe is in it. It's called Powered by Produce. I'm plugging it. I just did it. But there's a tofu cream sauce in there made with tofu. There's no cream. It's just tofu. Now, I will be honest with you. When I started making it, it's like use soy milk or water or something to water it down because it's plant-based. And like I had chicken stock. I just have that on hand. It's not vegan, but it's low calorie. And that's what really ultimately matters. If you're trying to make healthy swaps, you know, thinking outside the box, right?
Yeah. Just expanding your horizons a little bit.
And like not to keep tooting tofu's horn, but also you can make a lot of desserts with tofu too.
Yeah, isn't that because like silky kind of when you like
you want to use the silken one for sure. You don't want to use the firm or extra firm. You're gonna get a really weird texture. Silken is ideal.
Silken, use the silken. Yeah, definitely. I've heard that same thing. Mousses and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So, you know, all those little tips that I do just to lighten things up. And, you know, when in doubt, just type healthy in front of something you're trying to make on like a search engine and see what pops up. And be like, oh, cool. That's great. I'll do that. And accepting that sometimes it doesn't come out great. And that's okay.
Yeah.
As much as I love to say that I'm an amazing cook and cook everything perfectly, I've never screwed up a day in my life. I have very much screwed up recipes pretty hardcore. So even to this day, I still do. Because sometimes it just happens. And just going, well, okay, let's try that again, but a different way next time. Then it'll be fine.
And I think that's like almost part of the fun, you know, is that's like when you learn the most a little bit. Like, okay, this didn't work. Next time I'm going to need to do something a little different. So I think the more you do it, probably the better you get, or maybe the braver perhaps with experimenting. But it's all about trial and error.
Yeah, that's 100% what it is. Because if you stop the first time you fail, you'll never progress. Right.
Get back on the horse.
Was it Michael Jordan said you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
Yes. Yep. Yes. Such a good quote.
But like, that's the thing with cooking. Like, you will always fail if you don't try. Like, you got to keep trying and eventually you'll have a success, and sometimes sooner than you expect, sometimes later than you expect. But
absolutely.
The first time I ever cooked, I cried because it came out so bad. And it was just no. I was 12. I shouldn't have expected such high things of myself at 12, but
oh, that's so cute.
But you know, like, and I kept trying. I didn't let it get me down. So it's just a matter of accepting, okay, next time I'll try something different.
Exactly.
But getting creative. And also, what I've done before is if I go to a restaurant and I eat something I really enjoy, I try to see if I can recreate it at home, but in a healthier way. I'll just type in healthy version of that meal I had and see what they write. Sometimes there's ingredients that aren't that healthy, and just go, well, what can I add that's healthier than that? Right?
Just getting creative. I love that. That's a good idea. Especially recreating things that you've tried and you know you like, instead of just like going off the cuff and being like, will I even like this? That's a good idea. It
doesn't even have to be the whole dish. It can be an element of the dish. Like, I really like that style of like rice that they made with my dish. I want to see if I can make that. Like that's all I'm saying. You don't have to say, I'm going to recreate this entire gourmet meal from a chef. Like, don't stress about that. Just what did you like? What did you like about it? And could you do that in a healthy way at home? Like, what was your favorite part of that thing? Was it the flavor? Was it the spice? Was it the texture? Like, what did you like? And then there's a lot of healthy things that translate the same way. Like, eating healthy doesn't have to be boring or hard. It can be very easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it can be easy and jazzed up.
Yeah, like, here's like the silliest swap. Like, and I did this for the potluck we had the last time we had a potluck at work. I made that Thai noodle salad and I found brown rice noodles. Brown rice.
Ooh. Heck yes. Brown rice.
Yes, brown rice. That's very, very hard to find. And I've made
for sure.
And I've made brown rice spring rolls. Like, just just look around, see what you can find, right? Like if you want pasta, can you get whole wheat pasta, chickpea pasta, you know, lentil pasta? Like there's so many things out there.
There's so many. That's what's kind of nice nowadays is there's so many more like nutrient dense options, I guess, that we could incorporate.
Nutrient dense, but not calorie dense.
Yeah. There we go.
Oh gosh, I could keep talking about this for the rest of the day, but I can't because it's about that time.
I know. It's so fun learning about cooking things. Anyway.
I could talk about cooking all day, every day. I love cooking. It's like my favorite thing. And I was like, oh, healthy swaps. Let's do it. I know healthy swaps. I love it. But unfortunately, it's about that time.
Right. All right.
So what would be the takeaway today?
The takeaway is get out there and try. I would say get out there and try as far as the cooking goes. Use the internet as a resource. Type that word healthy in before you look. And, I don't know, be kind to yourself when you're experimenting. Have some fun with it.
Yeah. Not the end of the world if you fail. It just might taste a little weird. That's okay. I've had some weird food in my day.
Yeah. We all have, you know?
Yeah. Like, I don't think that works, but you know, it's fine. I'll eat it.
It's all good.
But with that being said, for those of you who are listening, make sure you like, share, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to comment below the video. We'll go ahead and answer that. We want you to share this with anybody and everyone. We're here for you.
We do.
And yeah, we love our fans. We love our people. And until next time, everybody.
Bye.